I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Simon Haw, the Commanding Officer of Household Division Bands. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Regiment Sergeant Major.
So my first question is, how did you first get into music?
Goodness, that's you're asking me to remember an awful long way back there. I started playing cornet in Appledore Silver Band, a little four-section band in the north of Devon. So that was the beginning, and I started writing when I was about 11 or 12. Writing pieces for brass quintet. I wrote a piece for solo trumpet. I remember playing the solo trumpet piece, which was a trumpet sonata, at an audition for the National Youth Orchestra.
Fantastic. And so what first connected you to British Army music?
British Army music. Well, I went away, left home, and I studied at Huddersfield, studied composition with a second study on trumpet. I got into electroacoustic music and studying under a chap called Phil Ellis, but left Huddersfield, did some travelling, and honestly I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought, right, I might get a job in the BBC radiophonic workshop, because that's where my expertise was, in manipulation of concrete sound and synthesizers and early computer generated music at that time. But I wasn't certain. I did some travelling. I travelled for 6 months down through Africa to Kenya with a load of English or British, Australian and New Zealanders, and we had a great time. Came back and I joined a brass band in Torquay, which was I think a second or first section band. And the principal cornet there was previously principal cornet of band Sandhurst, as it was in old currency back in the 1980s. And he said to me one day, "Simon, what on earth are you doing with your life? Why don't you join the army?" And he said, well, my good friend, Colonel Lane, is director of music, senior director of music of the Household Division, and then director of music of Irish Guards. I said, I'll write to him and see if he's got a position for you, which he did. But there was no vacancy in the Irish Guards. But in those days, the Irish Guards used to be right next door to the Welsh Guards. And Colonel Peter Hannam was the director of music there. So Colonel Lane said, "Colonel Hannam, have you got a position for a trumpet player?" Colonel Peter said, "Yes, I have." So off I popped for an audition. I remember that was in August 1988. And I did the audition, and I wasn't very good. I think I played a bit of the Hummel, because it was the easier of the two. And my sight reading piece was Washington Gray's, the really difficult cornet passage in the beginning of the trio, and it really wasn't very good at all. And he said to me, "Well, Simon, they'll expect you to be good," and that was his way of saying, "I'll give you a chance." And he gave me a chance, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. So you served for several years in the Welsh Guards band, but then went on to the bandmaster course. So what was it that prompted you to make that move out of a military band and more training?
So I spent 9 years with Welsh Guards and had a fabulous time. And writing through that period as well. I was the staff arranger for the Household Division, a bit like Sergeant Shelton and Sergeant Barras are doing now. But, I had a few views, and towards the end of my time in the Welsh Guards, the director of music was Colonel Stuart Wells. And I can remember stood outside of his office one day saying, "Really, this isn't good enough. Why aren't we doing the same as the Royal Marines and having a Mountbatten Festival concert? Why aren't we working together more and achieving more? We've got more to offer than the other services because of our mass and quality of what we've got, but we need to work together." And he was saying to me, "Well, that's all very well, Simon, but it's very difficult to get people to work together. But if you want to change things, then audition for the bandmaster's course and grow into a leadership role, and then make the change yourself. And that's the way to do it." So I said, "Okay, all right, that's what I'll do." So he sent me off for an audition on the bandmaster's course, and I got a place, and that's the journey I took.
Fantastic. So obviously you spent some time as a bandmaster, but then commissioned, and you've been within the Household Division as an officer in 3 different appointments. Can you tell us a little about your first appointment there with the Band of the Scots Guard?
Yes, well, I was coming out of a staff role at Nella Hall, and the Colonel of Camus, as it was at the time, Choral Army Music, Colonel Cuthbert Brown, called me into his office and said, "I've got some good news for you, Simon." He says, "First of all, we're going to appoint you as Director of Music of Band of the Scots Guards. And the other bit of good news is we're going to send you on the Intermediate Command and Staff course." Now, the Intermediate Command and Staff course, ICSC, is something I didn't want to do. But of course, he'd give me the big gift of Band of the Scots Guards, and I didn't have the heart to say, well, I'll take one and not the other. So I said yes to both, of course, and came to the Band of the Scots Guards, I think in 2011, 2012, but only spent 12 months there before I went off to ICSC and training on the staff course. But it was a great 12 months. And I can remember the first guard mount that I did, and it was very familiar to me. Having spent 9 years in the Welsh Guards, I knew everything about the Household Division, and performed as a trumpet player on multiple guards and Guard of Honours, state visits, Queen's birthday praise. So it was very familiar territory to me. But I can remember that very first guard mount as an officer of Band of the Scots Guards, marching across the palace, and I had a grin from ear to ear. It was such a euphoric moment to be in charge of a Guards band, but to experience it from that slightly different perspective. It was a great moment.
Excellent. So again, some time outside of the Household Division, again in staff role, following ICSC, and then you come back in, this time as Director of Music Coldstream Guards, and also at that point you commenced working with Commonwealth Music Services. Can you tell us a little bit about how that connection happened?
Yeah. Well, I left Household Division for probably 3 years, and I went to Headquarters Allied Rapid Reaction Corps, one of the NATO Rapid Reaction headquarters. And I think, in a sense, I miss music. I didn't know it at the time, but I had to pour my heart and soul into a completely alien environment. When I came back as Director of Coldstream Guards, I really found what I'd missed. And it was a great time. I was put in charge of the first Beta Retreat at that time in 2016, and the theme was the Commonwealth for the Household Division Beta Retreat. And so we wrote a song called Song for the Commonwealth, and we reached out through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to find if there was a youth choir from the Commonwealth that could join and sing that song with us. And that's where I met Sally Shebby, who's the Director General of Commonwealth Music. And we played Sally the song and played it to the Commonwealth Secretariat as well. They liked it, and fortunately the Commonwealth Youth Choir were able to come along to Horse Guards for that Beta Retreat and join us. And we had 150 children from Commonwealth Youth Choir singing a song for the Commonwealth, accompanied by the mass bands of the Household Division on Horse Guards Parade in 2016. And that was the start of the journey with Commonwealth Music, which we've explored for the remaining years of my service, where we worked very closely together, collaborating with the youth choir and the youth orchestra, lots of defence engagement opportunities, working with young people, and helping them with opportunities, performance opportunities as well. So we've explored all manner of things, whether it's concerts in East London or workshops, concert opportunities in London, and it's been quite a brilliant journey, really.
So as part of that relationship with Commonwealth Music, you've done some composition with them. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe initially the first Cenotaph Requiem that you composed?
Yeah, so as I've explained, I've always written. That was my first degree as composition, and written throughout my career. I think Sally's encouraged me to write, and she particularly encouraged me to write a work to mark the centenary anniversary of the end of the First World War, something I was reluctant to do, and I was being persuaded for quite some time. Eventually I said yes, but what started out as a single piece, one movement work, very quickly turned into a far grander composition, and so I wrote a requiem, so Cenotaph Requiem, which was written in 11 movements. I think there are 6 sacred movements and 5 instrumental movements. So sacred movements follow the Latin text from the Mass, and the 5 instrumental movements follow a very simple narrative through the First World War, such as Somme, Jutland, Marne, Passchendaele, etc. And so Cenotaph Requiem was born, and we were very fortunate to be able to record it. And the first performance was on the 1st of November 2018 in the Guards Chapel with the Commonwealth Scholars Choir and the Orchestra of the Household Division.
Again, you promote and go off on operations again, but this time you keep some composition going, and I believe that was quite important to you.
I was appointed as Stratcom Director for a 2-star American headquarters Special Operations Joint Task Force, which was focused on the fight in Syria. And I was working on a piece called Songs of Peace to mark the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And I wrote 2 or 3 movements out there, and it was a lovely thing to do. It kept me on the straight and narrow, and kept me in touch with my creative side whilst doing all this staff work as well.
Good. And so after that tour, you come back to Household Division bands again as commanding officer of those bands. So you've now got 7 bands, or 5 Foot Guards band. You've got the Household Cavalry and the Orchestra under you, some 330 soldier musicians at your disposal. But also, very early in that appointment, we come into a COVID situation. So can you tell us a little bit about how that maybe shaped your opportunities in that position?
Well, the pandemic has been very difficult for everybody in all walks of life. But perhaps sometimes when you meet a difficulty, there is an opportunity hidden within that. And I think that's how, in the Household Division, we've approached it as a whole team. It's not about me at all. There's been a whole input of ideas from the team, including you. And I think our opportunity was to just reset a little bit. Without the constant performance of state assembly and public duties, we had a bit more time to think. And we've certainly invested in a lot of recording. And in the absence of physical performances, we had to maintain that musical narrative, or the narrative of the Household Division, by recording and putting those recordings on a performance channel. And that's what we developed in close association with Sally Shebby, by the way. And so we developed a performance channel, the State Ceremonial Music Performance Channel. We've recorded some 40 albums over this 2.5-3 year period, and lots of other music as well, and developed our narrative, written as well as musical, lots of pictures. Very much saw that as our outward-facing performance platform during the pandemic. So, yes, very difficult period. At the same time, through the pandemic, we had musicians who were doing testing on mobile testing units and supporting other elements of government in tackling the pandemic. But I think the recording through that period and lingering on has been vitally important too.
Excellent. And also, you did have, quite early, were able to have musicians performing on national events, and probably the only musicians in the country at the time. Can you tell us a little bit about those events and how difficult was it to make that happen at the time?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate through the pandemic to still have the occasional performance opportunity. I think being in the military, we're very used to managing risk. And whereas civilian organisations and music ensembles were not able to manage risk with the same degree of freedoms as us, we have been able to do that. So putting it in a range of measures which still protects the musicians in that COVID environment, but allows us to do those performance opportunities. So we've had a very successful relationship with the BBC, who have given us a greater platform through broadcast, and we were very fortunate to form the orchestra for the Victory in Europe 75 celebration, which was broadcast from Buckingham Palace, and also the Victory in Japan 75 broadcast which was broadcast from Horse Guards Parade. Two very big concerts in which we were the primary orchestra for those events. So very, very lucky indeed.
Great ceremonial activity carried on once the pandemic was still going, and those measures were applied to make that happen. But what kind of bespoke or changes did you have to make to those kinds of parades to make them happen during that period?
Well, we had to operate in far smaller numbers, and we had to create distance between the musicians as well to protect them in that COVID environment, which we managed to do. But it made life very difficult. It made the musicians feel quite isolated on parade. So we had to work harder at that ensemble. Of course, we did the Queen's Birthday Parade in 2020 and 2021 at Windsor Castle, working with bands of only 50 compared to the band of 200 which we'd normally do on Horse Guards Parade. So a very much smaller ensemble, but it had to be, as refined as it possibly could be. Working with smaller numbers, it had to be perfectly balanced. And I think the acoustic within Windsor Castle helped us as well. So the sound bounced off those battlements there and helped that sound resonate through that kind of amphitheatre type of thing. So we're very fortunate. And of course we had the royal funeral in April of 2021, the sad passing of His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And again, the tri-service mass bands paraded, and we had a tri-service band in the quadrangle of Windsor Castle with Scots Guards, Royal Marines and Royal Air Force. And the band of the Grenadier Guards were the lead procession band for that. So again, a unique environment where we were still observing social distancing between musicians, but still able to operate, keep a tight ensemble and keep that overall effect as good as it possibly could be.
Good. So having left COVID restrictions behind and kind of some level of normality in your final year, you've been able to operate, so we say, more normally, but also had some key national events again, which are probably unique and may never happen again. Can you tell us a little bit about those, and how special is it to finish your career doing those kinds of events?
Yeah, well, it's been lovely to get back to normal. In 2021, on the 18th of July, the restrictions of the pandemic were lifted. We were once again able to perform our Beat Retreat on Horse Guards, the military musical spectacular. So that happened in 2021. And we've gone on from that to do a complete cenotaph parade, go back to the Festival of Remembrance in the Albert Hall with full forces. And this year, in the Platinum Jubilee Year, we've had some very big performances, you might say. So the Royal Windsor Horse Show, service at St Paul's Cathedral for the Platinum Jubilee, Queen's Birthday Parade on the 2nd of June on Horse Guards Parade, where the whole household division were on parade, and the mass bands back together at full force, the mass bands of 200 plus the mounted band of the Household Cavalry. So it was splendid to see. And then the icing on the cake, I think, was the Party at the Palace concert, where we were invited once more by the BBC to form the primary orchestra for that concert, and that really was a superb night. Great experience for musicians, and hopefully we did the nation proud.
Lieutenant Colonel Simon Haw, thanks very much for your time.